the airport you passed through last year is not the same airport you are stepping into today. In 2026, there are updated identification requirements, tougher screening procedures, new boarding technology, fresh carry-on enforcement measures, and security adjustments that are quietly catching even the most seasoned travelers off guard. And the frustrating reality is that most of these changes were never announced with any major fanfare. They simply went into effect. Today, we are walking you through 10 new airport rules that are tripping travelers up right now. So, you are not the person holding up the security line, missing your flight, or getting slapped with a charge you never anticipated. Stay with us because rule number 8 is something that almost nobody is aware of yet. Welcome to US Updates Hub, where we draw on experience from hundreds of flights to deliver simple, practical, and genuinely useful travel tips and strategies. If you are new here, go ahead and hit subscribe. We put out content like this every single week. If you are flying anywhere in 2026, whether domestic or international, at least one of these 10 rules is going to have an impact on your next trip. Leave a comment below and let us know which one surprised you the most. Was it the Real ID finally being enforced? The carry-on size crackdown happening right at the gate? Or perhaps the biometric opt-out option you had no idea existed? Every comment gets read. And if you want to stay one step ahead of developments like these each and every week, hit subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell. It costs nothing. It takes 2 seconds. And it could be the difference between gliding through the airport smoothly and getting hit with a fee you never expected. Let us start with the one that has already generated the most confusion at domestic airports this year. Real ID enforcement in the United States is no longer some distant future deadline. It is actively being enforced right now at security checkpoints today. For years, travelers received warnings that Real ID was on its way, and for years the implementation date kept getting pushed further out. So a lot of people simply stopped paying attention. That was an understandable reaction at the time. But in 2025, enforcement officially went live. And in 2026, TSA agents are no longer letting people slide through anymore. Here is what that means in practical terms. If you arrive at a domestic airport in the United States carrying an older state-issued driver's license that does not display the Real ID star marking in the upper corner, you may be denied entry through the security checkpoint. Period. Now, you can still present a valid passport as an alternative form of identification. That works perfectly fine. But if your typical routine is to grab your license and head straight to the gate, you need to inspect that license right now before your next trip. Look for the gold or black star in the upper right-hand corner. If that star is not there, your license is not Real ID compliant. Obtaining a Real ID is typically handled through your local DMV and requires documentation proving your identity, your address, and your social security number. The process takes time, so do not put this off until the week before your departure. The wisest approach is to check this evening. Do not allow this to be the reason you miss a flight. This next one is genuinely perplexing because it moved in the opposite direction from what most travelers were anticipating. A few years back, a number of airports in the United Kingdom and across Europe introduced CT scanner technology. Those large cylindrical machines capable of producing three-dimensional images of your bag's contents. The expectation was that you would be able to leave liquids inside your bag. No more fishing out your toiletry pouch at the belt. Travelers were thrilled. Many of us actually adjusted our packing habits because of it. Here is the issue. A significant number of those airports have quietly reversed that policy. The technology produced inconsistent results. Lines were growing longer, and some airports returned to the traditional 100 milliliter restriction, while the systems were being recalibrated or swapped out. So right now, depending on which airport you are traveling through, the liquid policy may or may not apply to you, and it may have shifted since your last visit to that very same terminal. What most travelers fail to recognize is that you simply cannot make assumptions. Even if the rules were different on your previous trip, verify before you pack. For domestic flights within the United States, the TSA 3-1-1 rule remains firmly in effect. Liquids must be 3.4 ounces or smaller, contained in one quart-sized transparent bag, one bag per passenger. No exceptions at the screening point. For international travel, research the specific airport's current policy before your trip. Do not pack a full-sized bottle based on something you read back in 2023. That policy may no longer be active. This might sound trivial, but it genuinely matters. Losing a $40 bottle of skincare product at security because of an outdated assumption is completely preventable. This next one might sound dramatic, but we have witnessed it happen on multiple occasions. You arrive at the gate, you pull up your boarding pass on your phone, the agent scans it, and absolutely nothing happens. Or even worse, it triggers an error message. The reason this is occurring more frequently in 2026 is that more airlines and airports have transitioned to biometric boarding and digital credential systems that do not always integrate smoothly with third-party applications like Google Wallet or outdated versions of airline apps. If your airline app has not been updated recently, or if your boarding pass was saved to a digital wallet app more than 24 hours before your departure, there is a small but genuine possibility that the barcode has gone stale or the format does not match the updated scanner technology. The solution is straightforward but important to remember. Always refresh your boarding pass on the morning of your flight directly within the airline's official application. Do not depend on a screenshot. Do not depend on a pass that was saved to your wallet 3 days earlier. Open the app, pull up the pass fresh, and make sure your screen brightness is turned all the way up when you scan. And as an additional safeguard, particularly for international flights, we still suggest having a printed boarding pass on hand or knowing where to obtain one at the airport. It requires 2 minutes of effort and has proven invaluable on more than one occasion. Airlines have been discussing carry-on enforcement for years, but in 2026, several major carriers have actually begun implementing it with physical sizing devices positioned at the gate and staff who are specifically trained to use them. This represents a meaningful change. For a long time, the dimensional restrictions existed in policy documents, but actual enforcement was hit or miss. A slightly oversized bag generally made it through without issue. That window of tolerance is narrowing considerably. What has shifted is a combination of factors. Flights are consistently full, which means overhead bin capacity is genuinely running out. Airlines have also recognized that gate-checking bags presents a revenue opportunity, and if they can point to your bag being technically outside the specified dimensions, they can charge you for it right there at the boarding door. We have observed this firsthand. On a recent trip, 3 passengers in succession were pulled aside at the gate with bags that appeared completely standard to the casual observer. 2 of them paid fees on the spot. Here is what to do. Familiarize yourself with your airline's precise carry-on dimensions before you start packing. Not just the general guideline, but that particular airline's specific policy because they differ from one carrier to another. Measure your bag when it is fully packed, not when it is empty. Soft-sided bags that expand beyond the dimensional limit are the primary target right now. And if you are flying a budget airline in Europe or on a basic economy fare within the United States, verify whether a carry-on is even included in your ticket price. Several airlines have shifted carry-on bags into paid add-on territory, and that trend is expanding. Quick pause before we continue. Have any of these already caught you by surprise? Maybe the liquid policy at an unfamiliar airport or a boarding pass that refused to scan properly. Share your experience down in the comments. Every comment gets read, and it genuinely helps determine what topics to cover next. Most travelers are familiar with the rule about laptops. Remove them from your bag and place them in a separate screening bin. That requirement is not going away. But what has evolved is what occurs after the initial X-ray scan, and which devices are now triggering secondary inspection procedures. In 2026, TSA and several international security agencies have broadened their secondary screening protocols to encompass additional categories of electronics. We are not just discussing laptops anymore. Large tablets, portable monitors, certain gaming devices, and even high-capacity portable power banks are being flagged with increasing frequency for additional manual examination. What most travelers do not appreciate is that the threshold for what registers as large or suspicious from a scanner's perspective has shifted as the detection technology has improved. The scanners are more capable now, which also means they are identifying more items. From a practical standpoint, this means a couple of things. First, if you travel with a significant amount of tech equipment, allocate additional time at security, especially at busy international airports. Second, keep your electronic devices accessible, not buried at the bottom of your bag beneath clothing and tangled cables. If a screening officer needs to pull something out for closer examination, you want to be able to retrieve it quickly without having to repack your entire carry-on right there at the checkpoint. And if you are asked to power on a device to demonstrate it functions, that practice still occurs, particularly on certain international routes. Ensure your devices are adequately charged before you arrive at the airport. TSA PreCheck remains one of the smartest investments a frequent domestic traveler can make. Shorter queues, shoes stay on, laptop stays in the bag. It genuinely makes the airport experience less stressful. But there are some modifications to how it operates in 2026 that are catching people by surprise. First, the renewal procedure. PreCheck memberships have a 5-year duration, and a significant wave of travelers who enrolled during the early adoption period are now reaching their renewal window. The process itself is simple enough, but what many people are unaware of is that your known traveler number, your KTN, can expire and silently disappear from your airline profile without any notification. You book a flight, your KTN is not attached, and you end up standing in the standard screening line despite maintaining an active membership. Always confirm that your KTN is correctly entered in every airline loyalty profile you use. Do not assume it automatically transferred from a previous reservation. Second, there has been an expansion of which programs qualify for PreCheck lanes. Global Entry still provides PreCheck access automatically, but some newer trusted traveler programs and even certain credit card partnerships are now offering conditional PreCheck access, meaning it functions in some instances but not always depending on the airline or airport. The smarter strategy is to maintain your own standalone PreCheck membership rather than depending on a third-party benefit that may not deliver consistent results. It costs $78 for 5 years. That is less than what most checked bag fees run these days. Airport lounges have endured a difficult couple of years. They became severely overcrowded. The food and beverage quality declined, and the credit card companies that had been distributing lounge access generously started quietly scaling back their offerings. In 2026, the restrictions are tangible, and they are impacting a large number of travelers who assumed they had access only to discover upon arrival that they did not. Here is what has shifted. Several major lounge operators have introduced or tightened guest limitations. Where you previously could bring in 2 guests using your credit card benefit, many have reduced that to 1 guest or eliminated complimentary guest privileges entirely. Some lounges now impose a per-visit guest charge of $50 or higher. Priority Pass, one of the most commonly held lounge access programs distributed through travel credit cards, has also undergone network modifications. Some lounges have exited the Priority Pass network completely, while others have implemented capacity restrictions that mean you can be refused entry even with a valid membership card if the lounge has reached its occupancy limit. What most travelers fail to understand is that lounge access is no longer assured simply because you carry the appropriate card. Policies differ by location, and they have been revised more frequently than cardholders are being informed. Before your next departure, check the specific lounge at your airport on the Priority Pass or relevant Lounge Network app, not just the general benefit description on your credit card company's website. Verify guest policies, operating hours, and whether that particular location remains within the network. Handle this the week before your flight, not when you are standing at the lounge entrance. This next one genuinely caught us off guard the first time we encountered it, and we have heard from numerous travelers who were completely blindsided by it. At an increasing number of airports across the United States, there is now an identification verification taking place before you even reach the TSA security checkpoint. Not at the checkpoint itself, but before it. In certain terminals, especially at larger hub airports, personnel are stationed at terminal entry points, verifying that you possess a valid boarding pass and proper identification before permitting you into the security queue area at all. This is part of a broader initiative toward layered security that originated in international airports and is now being adopted domestically. The objective is to reduce congestion at the checkpoint itself and introduce an earlier verification layer. It makes logical sense in theory. In practice, it means that if you are accompanying someone to the security area, or if there is an unaccompanied minor situation, or if you simply do not have your documents readily accessible when you walk through the door, you may encounter delays right at the entrance. The practical step here is uncomplicated. Before you enter the terminal building, have your boarding pass pulled up and your identification in hand. Do not wait until you reach the checkpoint to start searching through your bag. Approach the terminal entrance with the same preparedness you would bring to the security line itself. Documents ready before you walk through those doors. This is one of those policies that is not universal yet, but it is spreading. The airports where it has been observed most consistently are high-traffic domestic hubs, so if you regularly fly through major cities, keep this on your radar. Lithium battery regulations have been in place for years, but 2026 has brought a notable expansion in what is being flagged, restricted, and outright prohibited on commercial flights, and the enforcement is becoming more rigorous at the gate. The fundamental rule has not changed. Lithium batteries exceeding a certain watt-hour rating cannot be placed in checked luggage and must travel in your carry-on, where a potential fire can be detected and addressed promptly. What has changed is how that regulation is being applied to newer categories of devices. High-capacity portable power banks, the kind capable of charging a laptop multiple times over, are now being questioned more aggressively at check-in counters and at security screening. Some have watt-hour ratings that place them in an ambiguous zone, and airlines are making inconsistent determinations. If you travel with any type of portable charging device, check the watt-hour rating printed on the battery itself and compare it against your specific airline's policy before you pack. The general TSA guideline permits up to 100 watt-hours without restriction, and up to 160 watt-hours with airline approval. Above 160 watt-hours is generally not allowed on passenger aircraft under any circumstances, and here's where complications arise. Some airlines have begun imposing restrictions even within the approved range for particular routes or aircraft types. So consulting TSA guidelines alone is insufficient. Verify your airline's specific policy as well. It requires an extra 2 minutes of research before packing, which is vastly preferable to having a $200 power bank confiscated at the boarding gate. Biometric screening through facial recognition technology has expanded considerably at airports across the United States and internationally throughout 2026. It is now integrated into the boarding process at a large and growing number of gates, particularly for international departures. Here is the aspect that most travelers overlook. Participation is technically voluntary in the United States. You possess the right to decline facial recognition scanning and present your physical documents instead. But the option to opt out is not always prominently displayed, and the procedure for requesting it has become less visible as the technology has become increasingly normalized. At some gates, the biometric scanner is simply present. Staff scan your face as you board without explicitly seeking your consent. If you wish to opt out, you frequently need to proactively inform an agent before you reach the scanner, not afterward. Now, to be clear, for the majority of travelers, biometric boarding is faster and operates seamlessly. We are not suggesting the technology is problematic, but you should be aware that the choice exists, and you should understand how to exercise it if you prefer to. If opting out is important to you for privacy considerations, or simply because you prefer to maintain control over where your biometric data is stored, approach the gate agent before the boarding process commences, not during it. Inform them that you would like to use your physical travel documents instead. They are obligated to honor that request. What you want to avoid is discovering partway through the process that you were not aware you were being scanned. That is a decision you should get to make deliberately. This final one catches international travelers constantly, including people who have been traveling internationally for decades. Bringing food items through customs on international arrivals has always been subject to regulations, but in 2026, enforcement has intensified at several major ports of entry, and the penalties for undeclared food items have increased through U.S. Customs and Border Protection. We are talking about fines beginning at $300 for a first offense in certain categories. For specific agricultural products like fresh fruit, Meat or dairy brought in without proper declaration, the penalty can climb even higher. The mistake most travelers make is not attempting to smuggle anything. It is genuinely not realizing that a particular item qualifies as declarable. That apple you picked up from the hotel breakfast buffet, the cured meat snack you purchased at the airport overseas, the wrapped chocolate that happens to contain a dairy filling. These are all items that must be declared under U.S. customs regulations. The guiding principle is this: when you complete your customs declaration form or go through the digital CBP-1 process, declare anything related to food, even if you believe it poses no concern. Declaration is not an admission of wrongdoing. It simply means a customs officer examines the item and typically waves you through without issue. Failing to declare something that is subsequently discovered is what creates the actual problem. And for travelers arriving into the United Kingdom, European Union, or Australia, the regulations are equally strict and in certain cases even more stringent. Research the specific entry requirements for your destination country before you pack any food items whatsoever. This sounds insignificant until you find yourself standing at the customs counter, being informed that your snack is going to cost you $300. Not exactly the welcome you were hoping for. Here is the broader perspective. Airports and airlines are not remaining static. The regulations, the technology, and the enforcement are all evolving, and they are evolving more rapidly than most travelers are managing to keep up with. Real ID is actively being enforced. Liquid rules are inconsistent from one airport to the next. Boarding passes require refreshing before use. Carry-on enforcement is genuine, and it is happening right at the gate. Electronic device screening is broader than it has ever been. Pre-check memberships need to be verified for accuracy. Lounge access is less dependable than your credit card benefits might suggest. Terminal entry verification checks are appearing at an increasing number of hub airports. Battery regulations are expanding to cover new device categories. Biometric opt-out options exist, but you must proactively request them. And customs enforcement on food items is stricter and more costly than most people appreciate. None of these individually will destroy your trip. But walking into an airport carrying outdated assumptions is precisely how minor inconveniences transform into missed flights and unexpected charges. The travelers who consistently stay ahead of these changes are not simply fortunate, they are better informed, and now you are too. If you want to dive even deeper into strategies for getting through airport security more quickly and efficiently, we have a comprehensive video breaking down the most effective screening line strategies, including some approaches that work even in the busiest terminals. We will put it on screen now and include a link in the description for you to watch next. If you found this helpful, definitely hit subscribe to join us back here for more travel tips and strategies each week at US Updates Hub, and we will see you in that next video soon.